Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per detail.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
All right. Welcome back. It's Fit Nation. All right, let's welcome to the Misfit Nation, Jenna Ashlyn. She's a volunteer for Southern Ohio Survivor Advocacy Outreach Program, providing support and services to victims of abuse. She's a lover of animals of most types and spends her extra time being a mom and cuddling with her 10-month-old Cocker Spaniel. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm glad we're able to get connected, and now we can get your story out here to the masses as much as possible. So if you would, please tell the listeners of the Misfit Nation a little bit about you from as far back as you want to go to where we are now.
Well, I've always been a writer, and that wasn't such a good thing whenever you're growing up because you tend to be a little unusual. But as I grew up, I went to college. I did some creative writing classes and stuff, and then I spent a lot of the time in the English department outside of class as well. But I grew up. I had kids. I got married, and writing became more of a therapeutic kind of a thing, and that was okay for a while. And then I ended up losing my husband whenever I was 30 years old. He died of a heart attack, and I started writing for other reasons. I started writing to heal, and I ended up in an abusive relationship. I didn't really realize it at first. I definitely had an inkling, but I wasn't real sure what was going on. And as time went on, I started writing a book called Within the Gray, and that was kind of my way to cope. So I'd be sitting there on the couch, and he's glaring at me because I'm not spending time with him. Even though I was right there. And, I started writing about, what I wanted, and someone to be supportive of me and everything. And so this book came out, and it was very metaphorical, but as I finished it, I kind of set it to the side, and I started writing another book, and it was called Sheila's Men, and it comes out. It should be out now by the time this airs. And I started to tell the truth because Within the Gray was like, okay, this is what should have happened. Sheila's Men is what actually happened. And as I started writing it, my life started to change, and I started to heal, even though he was still sitting right there. And I put the book away, and I finished up Within the Gray. And 6 months later, whenever I picked it back up, I realized that, the person that I was writing about in Within the Gray actually existed. And it was kind of like I wrote him into existence. I know that's kind of a controversial thing to say, but if you believe in manifestation or the power of God, or however you want to look at it, because they kind of cross over a little bit, he definitely exists. And he ended up being my support person as I went through the healing process, and I started writing again. And about halfway through the book, I realized it wasn't really about me anymore. And it became a mission. that I want to reach out to these people that think that they're crazy and they think that they're alone, whether it's a man or a woman, because it happens to both. It happens to a lot of people, to be able to reach out to them and say, hey, you're not crazy. You're not alone. This is what's really happening. And it wasn't about me anymore. And because of that, I wrote Sheila's Men within 6 months, edited it as I went. A few months later, it was done and I was scared. So I'm like, oh man, it's kind of definitely one of those, everybody has skeletons in the closet. I just happened to open up the door, put a spotlight on it and said, here you go. So this is, what really happened. And it's definitely become a mission to reach out to people. And that's one of the interesting things is, as I escaped my abusive relationship, he had found a new target. And I got to know her, and I didn't blame her for anything. And I just kind of left those windows of communication open, because every once in a while she would ask me some questions. And then about a couple years into it, she kind of looked me up and she's like, hey, this is what's going on. This doesn't feel right. I'm unhappy. I want out of this situation. And I talked to her and we kind of compared stories, and she heard more of my story because she was open to it at that point, without me being the crazy ex. And and it felt so good to reach out to her and to help her escape that I actually went to training to become an advocate in the state of Ohio. So I have that training, and I'm on call once a week for the crisis hotline. And I've helped a lot of people out just through Facebook Messenger or text messaging or phone calls, just people that I know or that kind of, I don't really know that well, but like friends of a friends or acquaintances that hear a little bit about me, and I've been able to reach out to them, and it's just been life-changing.
Yeah, I'm sure that's amazing to give back after you went through the spiral of the tumultuous relationship. You're able to not just help those others that are going through it at the same time heal or try to get out of it. It also helps you in your healing process, as now you're able to stop it from happening to someone else. So I'm sure it's I guess reward for you and that person on the other end of that call, that messenger or that text, that hey, there's someone here that actually cares about me, that probably needed this when they were going through it, and now they're stepping up and giving it to them.
Yes, I live in a small town, so there's a lot of small towns out there, and people don't always necessarily have a place to go or someone to call or a way to, get help. And, they're in this spiral where they think they're crazy, and they think that the only way out is suicide, because that's the only way that they can find to escape. And that's not the case. And I'm here, and the book is here to tell people that, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. There is a much better life on the other side. I went from, I was very suicidal. I was looking at guardrails and cliffs on the way to work every day going, if I just hit the gas real hard,
Oh, wow.
And I can laugh about that now, but it was devastating. I remember crying all the way to work, but now I look back and I'm like, that's so sad, but it's so empowering to know that I went from that to someone who is giving back and is able to help other people to realize that life is so much better on the other side of this, and you can escape. It is possible to live a good life. And I'm getting married in June, and I'm excited, and my life is completely different than what it was a couple of years ago.
Congratulations on your nuptials this coming June. Hopefully it's able to have some guests there, and we're not all locked down for whatever reason this year. June should be nice, hopefully. Yeah.
Well, we're going to Florida to get married, so that's a little scary because you never really know, because I'm all the way in Ohio. So I'm like, oh. But we have.
I was just stuck in Florida for a day. So I was just stuck there for a day thanks to an airplane, but it was beautiful and it was wide open. So I think you'll be fine.
Yes. And we've been down there a few times and not had any trouble with COVID. So
good. That's always good. So how long after your first husband died when you were young, 30 years old, how long after his death did you wind up in a relationship with your second, I guess, the tumultuous relationship?
Well, he wasn't actually my first. He was in there a little bit. I had a really bad childhood, and I had some childhood abuse, and that kind of puts you in a pattern where you tend to attract and draw people like that to you. So my relationship history is not the best. But I'd say it was about 6 weeks in, because 6 weeks after his death, I started looking for a friend, because I guess he was talking about me at work or something like that. But all of these people, I guess they thought I was this rich widow or something, and I was living in subsidized housing and had absolutely nothing. And all these people just kind of like started swarming in. So I was like, okay, I need a friend. I need to make it look like I'm off the market. And that's kind of how he came along. And I tried to maintain a just friendship kind of thing. And he just kind of slowly wore me down. So way too soon.
Way too soon. Definitely. The window wasn't open wide enough yet. Yeah. So, and that's kind of odd that everyone thought you were the rich widow, even though all the other factors were involved. And I'm sure they thought because insurance pays out right away and everyone makes millions of dollars if someone dies in their life. That's not always the case. It's definitely not always the case for everybody. And
yeah, we didn't have insurance.
Especially young couples, they don't think about that. They don't think they think they're invincible. They don't think it's going to happen to them at that age. So it's hard to plan that out. And most couples do not, unless they're really forced upon them. So you wound up in this relationship. How long did you stay with him until you realized, hey, this just isn't right?
It was a few years. I think that I figured it out. I was starting to figure it out before we got married, but I kind of felt pushed into it because he was living with me, because he was living in a bad situation with his mother and grandmother. And so, I felt bad for him. So I had him move in with me and my kids. And then I tried to get him to leave and he wouldn't leave. And then on the other hand, I have like family members who are very strict, really religious, and, bless their hearts, their hearts were in the right place. But I ended up feeling so guilty about him living there and then not being able to get him away that I eventually married him and made the most of it. And it was okay for a while. But as I started to heal from the trauma and get more distance from where my husband had died, I started to realize a lot of things, because whenever he died, I definitely was not ready for another relationship. I wasn't ready to be married, but I didn't really have a lot of control. I didn't make a lot of the best decisions. And so I ended up in this relationship. And a few years later, I'm like, okay, this isn't good. And then one day, my youngest, actually, I was tucking her into bed and she looks at me and she's like, Mommy, I want a new daddy. And I'm like, oh God.
Oh.
It was so sweet and so sad. And I'm like, what do you do with that? Because it just kind of got to the point where, we were living in subsidized housing. By the time she had said that, I had, went back to school. I got a little associate's degree in business. I was, working my way up and figuring out how to provide for us. And he's sitting on the couch playing video games. And so I started spending more and more time away from home, and that kind of gave me enough air to kind of realize what was going on. And then it became more about, okay, how do I survive this? How do I get out of this? And I think that realization of what's going on, because you don't really know at first, because it is such a progression and it can happen so slowly.
And I think that also adds to not leaving right away, because you don't really see it right away until, like your daughter said that to you. That was your eye opener, your gut punch, your stab in the heart. Hey, we got to do something different here, Mom, because this isn't right for you or us. And I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, she was only like 8 or 9 years old. And I think when you're going through that, you're thinking, well, maybe I just don't love him enough because, this happened to me. And, maybe it's not puppy love anymore, and there's all these ways that you can rationalize it. And that's what you do, because you don't want to think that you're in one of those situations, but sometimes you most definitely are. I mean, not always, but sometimes, what your heart is feeling is the truth. And I really want to express that it's not just women that go through this, but men go through it too. So
it's definitely both men and women both go through it, and both have that feeling that it's their fault if they're feeling that. So they have that feeling of guilt that they're the reason why they're getting in trouble with their relationship partner. And then they stay too long. And like you said earlier, you wanted to drive through a guardrail. You were looking for ways to end it. And that's not how you're supposed to feel ever. But you didn't realize that at that time because you thought you were the problem, really. You're blaming yourself. And I'm sure that's a lot of people you have the honor to try to help now are going through the same thing.
Yes. Yes. I really hope that, it's something that people grab a hold of and they read the book. They tell a couple people, and these people are able to kind of recognize what's happening to them and how they're feeling and how common it is, because we all say that, and there's the Me Too movement, and there's all these things, that people are talking about, but they're not really talking about it. They're like, oh, well, escape abuse and all of this, and they're not really talking about it in a way that makes people feel that they're not alone.
All right, definitely.
They're not. They're coming up with cute little words to call it. Oh, they're just gaslighting you. I forgot the word there for a second. Sorry. It's just gaslighting, and that's a fancy name for a really horrible situation. But it's just kind of like glossing over it because nobody really wants to talk about it. It's my hope that my story, all of the hell that I went through will be for good.
Definitely. And you brought up the Me Too movement. And like you said, it's a movement for the media, I believe. That's all the Me Too movement was. It was for big names. And the Me Too movement was meant to take down big names, but not take care of little people, the people like yourself that are in the trenches, that are fighting this fight right live. And the people that you're helping through your advocacy. The Me Too movement was basically a look at me thing, but not a look at you thing, and not look at those who were actually suffering. And I think what you're doing is way better than what that movement ever could do.
I hope so, because I don't think the Me Too movement did what it could have. I think it might have scratched the surface maybe a little bit, but to really dive in deep and say, hey, this is exactly what happened to me, because I write in a very visual, very descriptive way, but also in a way where anybody can relate. One of the things that I did in the writing of this book is I never gave Sheila a description, not ever. So you have no idea what she looks like. So you can put yourself in that position. You can put your neighbor into that position, or your daughter, or your mother, or your sister. If you know somebody who's been through this is a great tool for people that have been through it, and for people who, know someone and they want to understand, you're going to experience it a little bit.
Definitely. And I think the way you wrote it without the description will help those put their own face in there, or their own description in there to say, hey, that's me that this book is written about, and I need to take that step through that wall and make my life better, see the light and drive forward. When you went through this, I'm sure your mental health took a toll. I mean, not just through that portion. First, you lost your husband at an early age. That's a mental leap too. And then you went through this. So that's another mountain to climb mental health wise. Did you realize that, or was it after you realized that you were in the abusive relationship that you sought help for your mental health as well?
I started seeking mental health pretty early. And it kind of was an on again, off again thing, because I really just didn't have much time, because I was working. I became the store manager of a jewelry store. It took a long time to get there, and it was just a whole lot of work. So I was gone like 60 hours a week. And eventually, though, I thought I was going completely crazy. And he was really helping confirm that and make it seem way worse than it was. And I had depression, I had PTSD, I had, they said that I had characteristics of bipolar. They said I had characteristics of borderline personality disorder. And because I wasn't making the best decisions at time, they tried to put me on lithium, which for some people that's great, but that was kind of a wake up call for me. And I'm like, I'm not this person. This isn't really who I am. I'm not these things. And later on, I kind of realized, that those were just trauma responses, because whenever you're going through trauma, everybody hears about fight or flight, but sometimes you freeze. And one thing that you don't hear about is fawning. And that's whenever you kind of just blend in, you make peace, you just kind of go with the status quo to kind of preserve your own life.
Definitely. And that, like, I'm glad you brought up the fight or flight. And that's what a lot of victims go into. If they realize that they can fight, or they can flee, or they can sit there and get that Stockholm syndrome and become one with their captor at that time, or their abuser, for better term than captor. Yeah, I guess they both coincide in that point, because they're capturing your emotions, they're capturing your well-being. And that Stockholm syndrome makes you more resonate towards the abuser than towards you, and you lose that sense of you the whole time. And I think you've made that positive step forward, not just for you, but for all those that you help now, in the writing of the 2 books and your advocacy. That's probably the biggest portion. The books will help those who you can't speak to right there in Ohio, but the books will reach the masses. How does that make you feel that you're able to get that story out like that?
So whenever I first started sending it out to beta readers, and they started saying, hey, I've seen myself in this. And, I have people that have already read it, that are set to review it and everything, because that's just how you do things. It's very powerful, and it makes me very happy, but it is also very, very sobering, because it's a huge responsibility, and it's very serious, and it's already more than what I thought it was going to be, because writing, you're like, man, if I can just get to 1 or 2 people that can read this, if I can just help 1 or 2. And we're way past that already, and the book isn't even released yet. So, and I remember it, it's overwhelming, it's surreal, but it's beautiful, because as people read it, and as I talk to people, I always tell them, and like I almost feel like a nag, but I'm like, if you need anything, please message me. And I really mean that, and I'm going to try to stick to that. Anybody that starts to read it and they want to talk, try to reach out to me, and I'll do the best that I can to get to you. I don't know how big this is going to get or how small it'll stay, but I'm going to try to be there for people as much as I can, or find other people that can help them. I think one of my biggest surprises was that whenever I started putting it out there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick with like female publishers and female contact people. And my greatest champions have all been men, all of them. And my publisher, he just told me how powerful it was. Before they even accepted it for publication, he's like writing me. He's like, man, I've read this book and it's so powerful, and this needs to get out there. It's like, we're still going through the process, so this isn't an official offer, but it is very sobering, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I think something is happening.
Like you said, it's a sobering feeling. Just helping one person's great. When you have the one-on-one call, that's a great call. Now you're doing U to X, because you don't know how many people are picking up that book, having their cry while reading it, hiding in their bathroom reading it, or wherever they are reading it in their nook, and crying, saying, I wish I can hug this woman for writing this. And their hearts are pounding, your heart's pounding, because you know it's happening. It's happening right now, and your blood, you're getting that rush of feeling, I actually helped someone today. And that's an amazing feeling. And you should pat yourself on the back a little bit for that. And also for breaking through the barrier that you had to make it to this point and still be sitting there talking to me.
It was actually, getting the book out there was actually the hardest thing, because whenever we first managed to split up, if I said anything to anybody, because you want to talk, you need to talk. Sometimes you need to share. And well, at least I'm one of those people. And like, if I live in a small town, so like if he heard anything through the grapevine, then he was calling me or messaging me or stopping by where I was working and like literally stalking and telling me, if you say anything, I'm going to tell them everything that you did. And I did some bad stuff. And so I was afraid to say anything, because I just didn't want to get stalked. I didn't want to hear from him. I didn't want those things to happen. And so actually writing it was one thing, putting it out there was quite another. And that was like the last stronghold that he had. And it was really, really difficult. So to be here and to be in this situation is very empowering. I remember whenever I started putting it out there and I'm like, okay, I need some protection. So I bought a gun and I got my concealed carry and, you know, I learned about things, you know, just in case. But I remember sitting there thinking, you know what? And like, this is going to sound so dramatic and I'm sorry, but it's so true. I remember that because I actually filed a police report because I wanted, like, if they try to come against me, even though I changed names, you know, I changed descriptions, I changed hobbies, you know, and I'm using a pen name and I'm calling it a fictional retelling. If he tries to come after me for anything, here's the police report. Here's where I filed, you know, for a protection order. Here's all of this. And I remember sitting there in my car thinking, you know what? I'm going to do this. I have to do this. This is about more than me. This book has to get out there and I need to protect myself as much as possible. But if something happens to me, at least I have done the right thing.
Definitely. You definitely did the right thing. Protecting yourself and getting the writing out there it's not just helping you, it's helping everybody. And that's great things. If you can give advice to someone that is in the situation on how to recognize the signs and what to do next, what would that be?
You need to listen to your heart. You really do, because you know, if you're going through this, a part of you knows, and you're just kind of denying it. You know, reach out. There's tons of Facebook groups that I'm in that can help you. You can reach out to me if you have questions. I recommend getting the book, not just because I want to make a sale, because it can be used as a tool. Get a journal, start talking about how you're feeling. If it's not safe to do that, then try to find someone, you know, find your crisis centers. There's RAIN, there's Voices Beyond Assault. There's a lot of local chapters as well that are across the country that should be able to help you and just be able to talk to you, you know, get into therapy, find somebody that is trained in trauma. But believe yourself. I think that's one of the things that you have to really realize is that there comes a point where you don't believe yourself. But if you listen to your heart and what your mind is telling you, most of the time it's right.
Definitely. Once that heart tells you the light turns on, you should go green with that light and go forward with that movement. And to switch gears, also as an author, that if a person wants to write a book, what's the first thing you should do as an author? Like when you found your publisher, how did you go about doing that?
The first thing I did was anytime that I get an idea, I go get a journal and I just kind of jot everything down. And if you don't have a lot of resources, I actually wrote Within the Gray through email to myself. Google. That's what I did.
Nice.
A lot of time. Within the Gray was literally written emailing myself. You know, I would sit down and I had like this one email thread and that's what it was. It was the book. And just put pen to paper, write what you feel. You know, reach out to other writers because most of the time they're there to help you. It's a really good group of people. You can find them just about everywhere, all over social media. And most of the writing community tries to help each other out. But if you're going to write, just write. Don't overthink it. Just do it. And once you get into those writing communities and stuff, you can find a lot of resources on who you should contact, how you should query for an agent, or how you should send out queries to publishers and things like that. There's a lot of advice out there. But my first thing is to just write however you've got to do it, whether that's pen and paper, whether that's, you know, on napkins to start, you know, get you a little shoebox if you gotta, you know. Like I said, I wrote Within the Gray in email.
That's amazing. That's the first time I've ever heard someone do that. Your inbox was obviously full because you're able to write a book, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was at work all the time, and I was working like 60 hours a week. So I'd get a break at work and I'm sitting there on like the company laptop going, or the tablet stuff going.
I mean, that's workaholic, but it is outstanding to get that done in that method. I've never heard that before. And I think that it worked for you. So it'll probably work for many others that never thought of that. Because everyone thinks you have to write in a Word document and then do this, or in a Google Doc, and that way you save it and you can go to other places. Email is always there too. It doesn't disappear. So that's a great bit of advice right there. Jenna,
it's
good.
I mean, it's kind of unusual, but it's not going anywhere,
Right. It never disappears unless you have a big time name that can delete all your servers.
Ooh,
yeah.
Pretty awful.
Yes. But Jenna, thank you for taking some of your time to join us here in the Misfit Nation, and we look forward to great things from you in the future.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too.
You know how we do this. Thanks for taking some of your time to spend with us on Misfit Nation. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share the link as much as possible. If you want to, please become a supporter to help us carry this thing on. We appreciate you. If you know someone that brings that energy, has a great story, is an up-and-comer in the industry of music, in the arts, have them reach out to us on themisfitnation.com. We will get back to them within one day and get them on here so they can share their story with the world. As always, till next time, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are Fit Nation.